Hello everyone, this is Jeannie Kam from GuruMe, and today we'll talk about biology. So, it's chapter 2, cells, and what pops up your mind if the term cells? So, many of you think, because it's a biology class, maybe cells that compose our body, right? Or some of you might have thought the cells in terms of a cubicle or a room. And a few of you would have thought of cell phone. So actually, the cells that compose our body is originated from a room or a cubicle. What does it mean? Before we talked about it, we have to briefly know the history of this cell theory. So, first, there was a Dutch optician called Johnson, and he invented a compound microscope. The meaning of compound is there are many lenses. So, with using many lenses, or in his case, 2 lenses, he provided greater magnification in order to observe small things. And then the English philosopher or doctor Robert Hooke, studied quark with a compound microscope and named the structure cells. So this is the origin of cells. So you know what quark is, right? The cork lid that keeps wine bottle closed, right? I don't know whether many of you have seen the cork, but if you looked thoroughly into the cork, it actually looks something like a hollow cubicle. So Hooke thought, well, it looks like a small room. So that's why he called this small room cells. So actually, our second definition explains the first definition. And then Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, another Dutchman, discovers unicellular organisms. Have you ever heard of unicellular organisms? Well, uni means one, and cellular is cell, and organism is organism. So we know there is an organism that consists with one cell. So it's really different from our human body, right? Because our human body is composed of many cells. So can you come up with an example? Have you heard of something called Escherichia coli? Or also known as E. coli? So E. coli would be the most famous example of unicellular organisms because it is live inside our colon, and by operating just one cell, it operates all functions of life. So let's see what that functions of life are, and let's dig in how structure of E. coli works in the chapters later. And then Matthias Schleiden from Germany suggests all plants were made of cells. So there is a development. And Theodor Schwann, also from Germany, suggests that all animals were also made of cells. Then the Czech Jan Evangelista Purkinje named the cell contained protoplasm, and Rudolf Virchow from Germany suggests all cells come from cells. So let's see what that means. So these are 3 components of cell theory that we must memorize. Therefore, I want to have a red box highlights on your notes. So cell theory is first, all living organisms are composed of cells and the products of cells. So we know our face, eyes, or mucus cell in our mouth or nostril are composed of cells. Then how about nails or hairs? Because even if we cut it, we can't feel the pain, meaning it doesn't really consist our body, right? Well, although it seems like our organism are not composed of the cell because of hair and nails, because they are products of cells. Let's say hair came from hair follicle, hair cells, and nail from nail producing cells. They can be considered as a products, and that's why we call all living organisms are composed of cells and the products. And second, cells are smallest unit of life. Well, that's easy because if we think of it, we define cells as the smallest unit of life. And third, cells only come from pre-existing cells. What it means is, if there is a vacuumed or empty room, and then cells can't just pop up inside. There should be actually cells in order to produce cells. So there is some really famous experiment on the third option. What it is called chicken broth experiment. So have you ever cooked? Then your cooked meal might have gone raw because time passed, right? So this scientist thought, well, I didn't put any of the living organisms inside, then why does it go raw? If it goes raw, there must be cells or bacteria that must go on under work, right? So what he did is he developed a special apparatus, very weird looking pot. So first, what he did is he made chicken broth, and then he boiled it and kept the lid open. That was the first one. And second, he boiled it and kept the lid closed. And third, he boiled it and then he kept the lid open, but the bottle that contains had the weird shape that is almost impossible for another bacteria to penetrate. So the reason why he boiled is to kill any organism or living things. So after a few days, he looked up the experiment again, the apparatus again. And then the first one, of course, got brought. And second one didn't. Third one didn't. So what he figured out was maybe there is an organism floating around the air. And then as time passes, this organism might have fallen down, getting the chicken broth to rot. However, because for the second one, because due to the lid, the organism can't go inside. So that's why it didn't get rot. And third one, even the organisms want to go in, it's actually not easy to fly and float in this way, right? So that's how he figured out cells only come from pre-existing cells. So the cell theory, these three theories are widely accepted, and advances in technology have allowed us to greatly increase our knowledge of cells. In particular, development of electron microscope has allowed us to study the ultrastructure of cells in more detail than Robert Hooke could ever have imagined. So what does it really mean about widely accepted? Does that mean it's not a fact? Well, it's true. In science, many things can be rebuked. So, for example, have you heard of Copernican theory? So this, before medieval period, many people believed that Earth was the center of the universe. However, Copernicus doubted this theory and then said, well, I think sun is center of our solar system. And then although the church and the Catholic Church and the church try to repress him, later it turned out that solar system indeed has the sun as the universe. So the lesson from this story is that even the science has many established theory. Those theories can always be questioned and rebuked. This cell theory as well, it is widely accepted, but there is a possibility that it can be rebuked. Okay? But so far, scientists and people find this cell theory as true. So that's why we are learning it. And that's the basis of cell theory. So we talked about how E. coli carries out all functions of life. And the functions of life consist of 6 functions. First, metabolism. Second, response. Third, growth. Fourth, reproduction. Fifth, homeostasis. Sixth, nutrition. And another 7th one would be, optional one, would be excretion. So unicellular organisms are fully functioning individual organisms, so they need to carry out all functions of life. The functions of life has metabolism, which include respiration and excretion. So in this book, they had metabolism and excretion separate included, but other books may have separated their use. So that's metabolism. And response. So let's say if I poke you, you will try to avoid it, right? That's a part of response. Or if you touch a hot teapot, then you will be not noticingly just try to avoid, right? Those are all counted as response that is acted through sensitivity, sense. Third, growth includes both in cell size and numbers. So that's why from the baby who is, let's say, 1 meter, if she grows, she can become 1.75 meter. And the growth contains both cell size and number. For fourth, reproduction, whether sexual or asexual. So human has to go for reproduction by mating a female or male to reproduce a baby. However, the meaning of asexual is, have you heard of planaria? It's a type of, or let's say starfish. So if there is a starfish, if you rip them into a half, then they don't die. Instead, they will grow another part. Like this. So when they get binary fission, which is cutting into half and then make their own body structure, recover their own body structure, we can say from one mother cell, one mother organisms, because they become two of daughters, then we say that's an asexual reproduction. Cool. And fifth, homeostasis. So homeostasis, it seems a bit hard language. Let's examine what it is. Homeo means same, right? Just like homo genus or homosexual, right? And stasis is status. So if we actually examine the term, it's really easy because homeostasis just means the organism wants to maintain the same status. So, which means maintaining relatively stable conditions inside the body. What are examples? Can you come up? Yes, we measure the temperature every day because of the coronavirus, and our temperature should be 36.5 degree plus minus 0.02. So our temperature, body temperature, would be 1, or our pH balance. So if we take out our blood and then figure out how much pH it is, it should be around neutral pH of 7. It can't be acidic, which is, let's say, 2, pH 2 or 1, or too extremely basic, which is 13 or 14. So homeostasis. And sixth, nutrition, which means the source of food. However, depending on the source of food, there can be further categorization. For example, an organism that makes their own foods, or an organism that consumes another organism in order to get nutrition. So the one which makes own food is called homotrope, or autotrope, because they automatically makes the food. For example, plant are not eating anyone. They would go through photosynthesis in order to obtain their sugar or glucose or starch, which is energy source of them. And the one that consumes another organism is called heterotrope. For example, human can't make their nutrition by themselves, and they have to either consume plants or animals in order to sustain our body, right? And excretion, of course, if we consumed things by nutrition, it will go through metabolism and then it will be excreted. So I have acronym, which is Mr. Gran. Okay, so it's easy if we learn from the acronym. So Mr. Gran is the functions, all 7 functions of the organism. Let's memorize that and move on. Compare the relative size of molecules, cell membrane thickness, viruses, bacteria, organelles, and cells using appropriate SI unit. So I know what molecule or cell membrane is, but I don't know what SI unit is. So SI unit is simple. It's internationally standardized unit. So although S and I have switched their parts, it is internationally standardized unit. For example, meters or kilometers or centimeters, millimeters, or have you heard of the unit below millimeter? Because we will talk about cells. It's important to learn about the smaller unit of the standard unit. So millimeter and below it would become micrometer, nanometer, picometer. Okay, and then we will care less about the bigger units because it's cell theory. So let's see how this works. So some organelles can be seen with the light microscope, others cannot. For example, can you see a cell membrane through our bare eye or light microscope? Not really. So to study the internal structure of the cell, we need an electron microscope. So electron microscope is another type of microscope. It bombards electron on the surface of the material and creates a 3D model, for example, the one on the right. So this is a bacteria, E. coli, that I talked before. And if we bombard the electrons here, then it reflects the electron, and then we can detect the reflected electron in order to create this 3D image. So we see the E. coli has a rod shape, right? Like that. And although even large cells are too small to see with unaided eye, it is important to have an understanding of relative size of cells and organelles. The following are typical size. So that means there can be exceptions, but instead of exceptions, we will learn how their conventional size matters, and they are in the order of size. So largest to smallest. So in cells, there are two types of cells, eukaryotic and prokaryotic. It's okay not to know the difference between eukaryotic and prokaryotic yet. We will study in the chapters a bit later. So just say cells. And then inside the cells, we know nucleus exists. So nucleus must be smaller than cell. So that's easy. And then other cell organelles. So we know nucleus is the largest organelle of all. But after that, cell organelle including chloroplast and mitochondria comes out. And then bacteria. So bacteria is far smaller than a cell. And then virus. So the reason why we have to wear a thick mask is because coronavirus are so small. And ribosome. And then the cell membrane that covers all the cell organelles and cytoplasm. Then DNA double helix and hydrogen atom that may consist the DNA double helix. So for today's class, we talked about cell theory and how the development of cell theory comes in, and then the three components of cell and the functions of life, and comparing the unit. So for later class, we'll talk about the difference between eukaryotic, prokaryotic cell, or animal or plant cell. I'll see you a bit later in our later class. I'll see you later.